Well, obviously, we all know that Farage won Clacton, and there's been a lot written about what the consequences might be of Farage winning Clacton itself. And I personally think I don't think Farage is going to end up holding Clacton, to be quite honest. Already, he's set a very poor example for being a local MP. We've had the caller on LBC who said, "Oh, I've written to him multiple times. I've been ignored." There's stories in the local Clacton newspaper of people saying, "Hey, I'm trying to contact Farage about this." Doesn't he doesn't seem to really care. And one of the lessons that should be really learned for all MPs of all parties, especially from the last election, was that those Conservatives who managed to retain their seats won because they ran a local campaign. They had a very, very good local reputation in the area as being a good constituent MP. One standout on this was, of course, Lee Anderson. Everyone, including myself, thought Lee Anderson was actually going to lose his seat. However, in the post aftermath of all this, asking, well, Will thought he was going to lose his seat. What happened? Turned out after he was given the boot from the Conservatives and, got really hammered constantly for saying lots of really stupid stuff, you actually realize he went away for some time. He realized mouthing off that much wasn't actually going to re-win him his seat. So he, should we say, took a back seat, sort of went undercover a bit, and started actually doing stuff in his local constituency. And ultimately, that's why he ended up re-winning his seat, even though there was a lot of polls prior to the last general election of him managing to retain his seat. And interestingly enough, today we've got an interesting analysis, more a data-driven analysis of Clacton, showing that it does have a very, very complex relationship with not only Brexit, but potentially with Farage as well. And what might this mean for, again, Clacton's future? Will it change hands in the future to a different party? Will it go to the Conservatives? Will it go to Lib Dem? Will it go to Labour? Maybe Farage manages to retain it, but honestly, the way that he's acting already, the people of Clacton already starting to get frustrated with the fact that they have an MP who really doesn't give a damn about local issues. So that is going to have a lot of effect on Nigel Farage. That is at the next election. That is a guarantee. But of course, we'll see what happens there. After all, Farage promising that he's going to sweep away the council with a whole host of reform candidates being put forward at the next local elections next year. We'll see if he can achieve that. But as we said before, reform MPs do not have a very good, should we say, reputation and track record for when they actually, get into the local council. So we'll see what happens, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stories about that if that happens. So, of course, let's have a crack into this and have a look at this data analysis. And shockingly, this actually comes from Conservative Home, of all places. Normally, you wouldn't see this type of data analysis in Conservative Home, but it's done from a very seemingly point of view of trying to say, hey, Conservatives, you need to be more data-driven about, about your elections and stuff. So it's kind of interesting, but take it with a pinch of salt as well, I would say, as well. So, before we do get into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page, the Buy Me Coffee link, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, the Patreon page, and of course, the Pony Club as well. And don't forget to leave a comment down below. Click the like button, click the share button as well. And of course, let's crack on with this. So, over we go to Conservative Home with Daniel Fredwickers, who is a former CT Group senior campaigner and a founder of the Fredericks Advisory Partners, and Dr. Yusuf Kofer, who is a clinical psychologist with the Bernard Kenshik Data Consultancy. So we'll see what happens here. So, in the wake now of significant and political economic shifts, understanding public sentiment has never been more crucial. Our groundbreaking study delves into the emotional core of Clacton, a coastal town that has become a bellwether for Brexit sentiment in the UK. I wouldn't say Clacton is the bellwether for Brexit sentiment in the UK. I think Brexit is a lot more complicated than lots of people seem to like making it really simple down to. You know, you look at the Brexit campaign. The Brexit campaign was just this blue amorphous blob, meaning Brexit could be anything that it wanted to and everything to everyone at the time. This is why after the elections, things got quite complicated about Brexit. But that's another topic for another time. But back to this. So they continue by employing now an innovative statistical approach. We've mapped now the complex tapestry of emotions that have driven public opinion and three pivotal topics: Brexit, the economy, and Nigel Farage. Imagine now being able to peer into the collective psyche of a community. And again, it depends what topic you're going to dive into. If you're going to sort of focus on these three, why are those three so important and particular to Clacton? I'm pretty sure there will be a number of data points you could ask things about here. So this is why I've always said be a bit, you know, take it with a pinch of salt when it comes to this, because this seems to be very, very cherry picked subjects, as we'll see in a moment on here. So imagine now being able to peer into the collective psyche of a community. That's precisely what our study aimed to try and achieve, with a very sophisticated tool called confirmatory factor analysis, to try and decode the emotional response for over 500 Clacton residents. Think of this as now an emotional X-ray revealing how different feelings cluster together and form broader sentiments. So our questionnaire measured over 20 distinct emotions, from enthusiasm to fear, pride, and anxiety. And again, you're judging emotions here for something that, when it came to Brexit, very much driven by emotion, very much driven by emotion. So by analyzing these, we can now undiscover a very fascinating insight into the town's emotional pulse. So first of all, Brexit, a tale of hope and apprehension. Clacton's relationship with Brexit is far from simple. Our analysis revealed now a surge in positive emotions, with residents feeling remarkably determined, attentive, and inspired when thinking about leaving the EU. This enthusiasm paints a picture of a community united in its optimism about Brexit, possibly fueled by a sense of reclaimed national identity and sovereignty. Well, how can you say that when that's not what you were measuring? that's painting something on about how you felt about Brexit. So so what, a surge of emotion. So they were feeling determined, attentive, and inspired. But you now paint a picture that you really can't claim that was, because you weren't really asking that question. You were more asking, what's your emotional impact of Brexit? Which is why I said the way they've done this is a bit weird. However, beneath this wave of positivity were the currents of fear and anxiety now still flow. While it's not as pronounced as positive sentiments, these concerns do suggest that even a pro-Brexit stronghold like Clacton and the path ahead is now viewed with some trepidation. Interestingly, we did find a very positive and negative emotions about Brexit do not seem to influence each other significantly. This suggests a very polarized view where optimism and anxiety coexist without necessarily affecting one another. Again, I'm not a psychiatrist, never done anything like that, but it seems to me they've asked a question: what do you emotionally feel about Brexit? What emotion does it bring out? And then they are then describing, or at least saying, what these emotions mean. And bear in mind, they've claimed that Clacton is a bellwether for the rest of the country about Brexit. But I guarantee, if you went somewhere else and did this exact same study and replicated it, you peer test it, you peer reviewed it, I don't think you would get the same about Brexit at all, especially only doing 500 people, which honestly would be quite an easy thing to replicate. But there you go. So next one, the economy. A very mixed bag of a determination and worry. When it comes to the economy, Clacton's residents are now caught in an emotional tug of war. On one hand, there's a sense of determination and activity, indicating now a readiness to face economic challenges head on. On another hand, significant fear and nervousness lurk behind the surface. Unlike feelings about Brexit, residents' emotions about the economy are more intertwined. People often feel both hopeful and worried simultaneously, reflecting often the complex and unpredictable nature of the economic forces. Well, okay, we know we've had 500 people do this. Why aren't you talking about how many people voted which way? How many people put for which emotions? Is it 50-50? Is it what? You're saying these things that you did this test, and then you're keeping a lot of stuff behind the scenes when you're talking about this test as well, which is why I say I think a lot of this, yeah, you need to take this with a massive pinch of salt. So Farage, a lightning rod for emotion. So few figures, of course, in British politics do evoke a strong reaction as Farage, and Clacton is no exception. The study now reveals that he's a deeply polarizing figure in the town. And those who do support him feel an immense sense of pride, inspiration, and enthusiasm. His detractors, however, express equally strong feelings of distress and fear. The emotional divide over Farage is very stark, and unlike the more nuanced feelings about the economy, people tend to fall firmly into either pro or anti Farage camp with very little middle ground. Now, that is actually quite interesting because this is something a lot of other people, if you've seen other people talk about Clacton or go to Clacton, that does seem to be very, very much a dividing, and doesn't seem to be absolutely no middle ground, and it is very, very much divided. So I can actually believe that, given the other stuff we've read about that. The other stuff, again, regarding the economy, how many people were saying about that? It'd be very interesting. Again, numbers about your Brexit. How many people did feel, enthusiasm? But of how many other people said other things as well? Because you only seem to be, especially when you're talking about the Brexit, you don't tend to be talking about the other ones. And you also talk about this, this wave of fear and anxiety. Well, how many people did feel fear and anxiety over Brexit versus those who recorded positive emotions? There's you know, there's this stuff about this test, this thing that they've done in Clacton, where you're not giving us the full picture of what your report has actually said, which is so yeah, you know, is why I said at the beginning, take this with a massive pinch of salt. So this is one of the things that they go on to talk about, and then they talk about all these emotions, how these are sort of very, very important. Ultimately, end of the day, we know that as important as emotions are for the British public and etc., some decisions should not be based on emotion. Yeah, Brexit, of course, is one of them. The economy, people will be worried about the economy. I think that's perfectly natural to be worried or hopeful about the economy. I think that is quite an average thing. If you were to ask people, how do you feel about the UK economy, that is a perfectly reasonable question, I think, to ask people and to see what they say. But Brexit itself, again, without numbers here saying how many recorded what, they might have only had one person to say this out of 500 people apparently doing this test. How many people actually reported a positive, uh, positive feelings about Brexit versus how many reported positive feelings about Farage? We'll be very interested to say, even if people who recorded positive feelings about Farage, did they have negative feelings about Brexit? What do they feel about Brexit now versus, say, in 2016? Have they changed their emotional appeal to that? So while some of this information can, I think, be hand waved away, because I don't think they've been fully honest about putting their data in front of people. I'd be very interested if this actually document, this evidence that they've put out, is available elsewhere. It doesn't seem to be. There's no links linking you to it. I'd say take this with a grain of salt, because You could easily say, well, one person had really deep negative feelings about Brexit, and that shows that Clacton has now deep apprehension to Brexit. And he's very unsure about Brexit. You see how, like I did just there, you can assign all kinds of things, and this is what seems to me to be that they've put unnecessary feelings or assign them to these feelings where they haven't really asked those questions. So, especially with the fact that you're saying, "Oh, but we found positive and negative emotions about Brexit," but they somehow don't seem to influence each other significantly. Why not? Why don't they seem to influence each other significantly? If apparently everyone was like really enthusiasm and the possibility of reclaimed national identity and sovereignty, why what about those people who felt negatively? Do they feel the same about that? Since with a reclaimed national identity and sovereignty? So there is a lot about this I don't know, this taking of emotions doesn't really offer that too much fascinating insights if I'm really brutally honest about it. Does not seem to be a bellwether. Um, doesn't really seem to be offering anything we didn't really other know, except probably backing up the thing about obviously Farage, the town being split about Farage. If you've read anything about Clacton, the post-electoral analysis, anything like that, people speaking about it or going to Clacton to speak to people about it, yeah, that's the sense you will get. Just the sense most people have gotten when they've gone and done that themselves. However, taking an emotional reading, an emotional X-ray of 500 Clacton residents, not an awfully big sample size. Well, it is a big sample size, but you haven't said again how many people are reporting positive emotions. You know, why aren't you giving us like um, 20% of people recorded positive emotions, where so many people recorded negative emotions about this. So I am very very skeptical about the the finding of this and some of the stuff here, the application of stuff that they've said about these emotions, which to questions they really didn't ask. So yeah, seems to be a bit odd, bit suspicious when it comes to that. That's a bit odd, I think. It's a bit disingenuous on there. But again, that's conservative home for you. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think down below about this, because this seems to be a bit odd, shall we say, for this, but I did say take it with a grain of salt. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.